Chapter 1. The Uninvited Guest. The mirror in the hotel suite cast back the reflection of a man determined not to fold. Mason Beck adjusted the cuffs of his navy suit with precision, his fingers moving automatically, almost rhythmically. The fabric was tailored, not flashy, but built to impress. Clean lines, Italian leather shoes, a subtle watch, gifted by Clarissa years ago when things still felt real. He looked up again at himself, scanning for anything out of place. A hair out of line, a wrinkle on his shirt, a crack in his composure. Nothing. Beneath the surface, though, it throbbed, that old anxiety he had learned to keep under control. Not fear, not anymore, but a dull, simmering question that never truly left. Will they treat me like I exist today? He picked up the note card from the dresser. A handwritten speech. 5 short paragraphs. Sincere, graceful, and heartfelt. He had rehearsed it more than a dozen times over the past week. It wasn't for Clarissa. Not really. And definitely not for her parents. It was for himself. A closing chapter to a long, humiliating attempt at being accepted into a world that had kept him on the outside since day one. He slipped the card into his jacket pocket. Tonight, he murmured to himself, we draw the line. The Bentley he had rented purred into the circular driveway of the Devlin Estates exclusive country club. The place looked like something out of European royals' fantasy. Stone archways, floral arrangements with their own names, and a valet team that probably made more in tips tonight than he did working double shifts 5 years ago. As Mason stepped out, he nodded politely to the valet, handed over the keys, and straightened his blazer with a quiet confidence. He walked up the steps slowly, taking in the towering entry, the golden chandeliers visible through the glass doors, and the faint sound of a string quartet echoing from within. He could already hear the clink of champagne flutes and the buzz of old money laughter. He exhaled once before reaching the welcome desk. The woman at the check-in station looked crisp in black and white, tablet in hand. Her professional smile didn't falter as she glanced up. Name, sir. Mason Beck. Her fingers tapped rhythmically on the screen. Tap, tap, swipe, tap. Her brow furrowed slightly. I'm sorry, could you spell that? Mason. Last name Beck. Beck. Another tap. A pause. Then the smile disappeared. I'm sorry, Mr. Beck. I'm not seeing your name on the list. He chuckled lightly, assuming it was some oversight. That's odd. My wife, Clarissa Devlin, helped coordinate the seating herself. I should be at the Devlin family table. Her eyes flicked up. This time, the polite expression had been replaced with something colder, a twitch of awkwardness beneath her lashes. I understand, but you're not listed under any table assignments. Mason's lips tightened slightly. He pulled out his phone, flipped to his last text thread with Clarissa, her final message. Don't be late. Wear the navy suit. Try to be sociable, please. He showed it to the hostess. That was less than 3 hours ago. She gave a mechanical smile, clearly trying to distance herself from the issue. I'm really sorry, sir. Maybe if you can wait over there. No need, came a familiar voice from behind. Mason turned. Clarissa stood a few feet away in a gold satin gown that sparkled under the foyer lights. Her hair was pinned back immaculately, and her lips were the exact shade of wine she only drank when trying to impress. She looked stunning but cold, and right now, her eyes held no warmth at all. Mason, she said, as if acknowledging a delivery man who had arrived too early. I'm not on the list, he said, voice low but controlled. She nodded almost casually. That's correct. There was a beat of silence. Excuse me, he asked, blinking. You're not on the guest list, she said again, slower this time, like he was a child struggling to grasp a rule. Because you weren't invited. Mason's face hardened, but he didn't move. What the hell are you talking about, Clarissa? She crossed her arms, ignoring the staring guests now filtering in around them. Let's not do this here. No, he said, his voice sharper now. We'll do it right here. Because I helped plan this goddamn dinner. I coordinated with the florist. I ordered the wines. I even rehearsed a toast. Clarissa tilted her head slightly, amused in a cruel way. You thought you were giving a toast? He stared at her. You told me to wear the navy suit. I also tell the doorman good morning. Doesn't mean I want him sitting at the head table. That one hit harder than expected. Mason felt something twist in his gut. You're serious, he whispered. She took a step closer, leaned in slightly, her words like daggers dipped in silk. Did you really think you were invited? She murmured. Strangers aren't allowed. Everything around him faded for a moment. The music, the laughter, the staff, the chatter of crystal and porcelain behind the doors. It all bled away into a low, white buzz. Strangers. That one word echoed in his skull. She turned her back to him, ready to glide through the doors and back into her world of curated lies and performative affection. But before she could take a full step, Mason spoke. Not loudly, not angrily. Calm, sharp, controlled. Then I'll live like a stranger. She froze mid-step, just for a moment, but didn't look back. Mason didn't wait for a response. He turned, shoulder square, and walked back down those same elegant stairs, every step echoing louder than the last. Not rushed, not humiliated, measured, intentional. People watched. They always did. Some murmured, some smirked. Let them. He walked past the valet, who glanced at him, puzzled, before scrambling to fetch the car. Mason didn't speak a word, didn't fumble for his keys, just stood still as the air began to shift around him. He wasn't broken. He wasn't crushed. He was focused. The Bentley rolled up quietly, sleek and black under the estate's lights. Mason slid inside, not bothering to glance back at the club. His fingers drummed once on the steering wheel before shifting the car into drive. As the country club disappeared in his rearview mirror, Mason let out a breath, not one of despair, one of clarity. Chapter 2. Flashbacks of a Fool. The road stretched ahead like a ribbon of molten gold, the early evening sun casting long shadows through the windshield. Mason barely noticed. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles tight, but his eyes weren't focused on the road. They were looking back to the beginning. She had walked into the bar like she owned the damn place. Clarissa Devlin had that kind of gravity, entitled, elegant, and dangerous in a way only someone born into power could be. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor with the rhythm of someone used to being watched. Eyes followed her. So did the silence. But she didn't look at anyone. Not until she slid onto the bar stool next to Mason and said, "You drink bourbon like you're trying to prove something." He'd laughed. Not a nervous laugh, a real one. "And you order Chardonnay like it's supposed to make up for being late," he'd replied, without turning to look at her. That got her attention. She had smirked, tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and said, "Touché." That was the night it started. He found out later she was slumming it. Her words, not his. She had been at a gala earlier, ditched the boring speeches and drove into town with a few friends. They were rich, loud, and wore rebellion like an accessory. She was the kind who flirted with danger, but only if it could be polished afterward. Mason wasn't a banker, or a CEO's son, or a man with family lineage etched in mahogany halls. He was a contractor's apprentice. He smelled like sawdust, drove a truck with a dent in the fender, and paid his way through night school. But he had charm, wit, and a jawline that didn't need grooming. He didn't ask for her number. She gave it to him. 6 months later, they were inseparable. Or so he thought. Mason turned off the main road and pulled onto a dirt trail that led to the overlook. His favorite place. You could see the city lights blink into existence below as the sun melted into the horizon. It was quiet here, honest. He stepped out, breathing the Highland air, the silence clinging to him like armor. A part of him wanted to laugh. How stupid he had been. Not for loving her, but for believing that love was enough to bridge a chasm built on class, wealth, and names etched on country club plaques. Meeting her parents had been a diplomatic mission from hell. Conrad Devlin, her father, looked like an aging senator and shook Mason's hand like he was testing grip strength, not meeting a future son-in-law. Miranda, her mother, gave him that too sweet smile, polite, practiced, and vacant. She kissed both Clarissa's cheeks and offered Mason tea like she was doing charity work. They sat in a white sunroom with views of the lake and a vase of imported orchids on the table. Mason, in his best pressed shirt and cheap cologne, felt like a handyman who wandered onto a film set. "So, Mason, Conrad had asked, swirling his scotch. What is it you do again? General contracting, Mason replied, keeping his voice steady. Mostly residential builds. I'm expanding into commercial this year. Ah, Conrad said, that condescending smirk crawling across his face. A working man. Miranda chimed in. Well, it's nice to see someone who uses their hands. My great-grandfather had a vineyard. Build it from scratch. We like self-starters, don't we, darling? Clarissa had laughed then. The kind of laugh that didn't belong to the girl he knew. It belonged to the one who played roles at these dinners, rehearsed in childhood to smile on cue. Later that night, Mason sat beside her on the dock, feeling smaller than he had in years. Your dad thinks I'm rough around the edges, he said, picking at the wood slats with his thumbnail. He thinks everyone's beneath him, she said, resting her head on his shoulder. It's not you, but it was, and he knew it. The marriage came quicker than expected. Clarissa wanted something simple but elegant. A vineyard wedding in Sonoma, string quartet, antique roses, and linen menus. The whole thing cost more than Mason made in 2 years. Clarissa's father wrote the check with a smug grin, like he was buying a new pet for his daughter. On the surface, it was perfect. But cracks? Cracks don't start as earthquakes. They whisper. She started correcting him at parties. No, honey, don't say deal, say contract agreement. It sounds more polished. She stopped inviting him to work functions. It's just, you wouldn't enjoy it. It's mostly finance talk. She began sleeping with her back to him. No fights, just frost. And Mason, fool that he was, kept trying to fix it. He joined her charity events, smiling next to people who only asked him what golf club he belonged to. He changed his car, his suits, even tried yoga once. The more he adapted, the more invisible he became. One night, at another gala, he couldn't even remember what it was for. He watched Clarissa move across the ballroom like a politician's wife. Elegant, smiling, perfectly poised. Not once did she look at him like she used to. That spark, that thrill, gone. He stood by the bar, nursing a drink, when he overheard 2 of her friends whispering behind him. Clarissa's husband's hot in a construction worker kind of way. Please, she keeps him around for the optics. Trust fund women always need a humble husband for narrative. He didn't turn. He didn't even flinch. He just swallowed his pride with the rest of his bourbon. Back at the Overlook, Mason leaned against the hood of his car, eyes on the stars blinking above. He remembered asking her once, early in the marriage, do you ever feel like I don't fit in your world? Clarissa had paused, then kissed him lightly. You're what keeps me grounded. It sounded sweet, but now it sounded like an anchor. Like he had been something heavy she used to keep her from floating away. Not a partner, just a weight. Over time, Mason stopped talking about his dreams. He had wanted to open his own firm. Instead, he took every job that paid well, stayed late, and sent the money to Clarissa's joint account so she could keep up with her lifestyle. He learned which forks to use, when to keep quiet at galas, and how to fake laugh at racist jokes told by her father's friends. And she grew distant, polished, smiling in pictures, quiet at home. She became a curated version of herself, designed to impress her family, her friends, and their world. And Mason? Mason became a shadow that matched her decor. The final straw? A dinner party. She had invited him, said it was casual, low pressure, just a few people from work. He had worn slacks and a button-down. No tie, no blazer, just clean and confident. When he arrived, her smile faltered. Everyone else was in cocktail attire. Champagne and flutes. Lobster on gold-rimmed china. Clarissa didn't introduce him. Not once. He stood by the drinks table like an awkward intern. And later that night, in their car, she said, "You embarrass me when you don't try." He didn't answer, didn't scream, didn't cry. He just drove home, and that night began keeping track of every time she made him feel like an outsider in his own life. Now, standing above the city, Mason exhaled long and slow. He remembered every compliment he twisted into a lie. Every dinner he sat through in silence. Every time he told himself this was love because he had fought so damn hard to earn it. Flashbacks of a fool. That's what they were. And he was done playing the part. Chapter 3. The calm before detonation. The road to the Overlook was quiet. Intentionally so. No traffic. No tourists. Just open sky above and the hum of the engine beneath him. Mason Beck sat behind the wheel of the black Bentley, like it was a throne he never asked for. His tie loosened, his suit jacket draped over the passenger seat, and his shirt sleeves rolled up halfway to his elbows. He'd left the cold performance of the Devlin dinner behind, but the fire in his chest hadn't gone out. He wasn't unraveling. He was preparing. The overlook sat on the edge of a ridge, a perfect vantage point over the city. The skyline shimmered in the distance, clean and composed, a million lights blinking like little lies in the dark. He parked, killed the engine, and stepped out. The evening air kissed his skin with that pre-autumn chill, a sharp contrast to the suffocating warmth of the anniversary venue. Mason stood at the edge of the ridge, both hands in his pockets, letting the silence stretch. There was no fury left to burn him alive. He had already processed the betrayal. What remained was clarity, cold, clean, and absolute. This hadn't started tonight. This had started months ago. The first real crack came in the form of a name. Not a lipstick stain, not a perfume trail. Just a name. Grant. He saw it on her phone while she was in the shower, the screen lighting up with a message. Dinner Tuesday? Same place. Mason hadn't said a word. Not then. He simply memorized the number. Over the next several weeks, he played dumb. Cordial. Present. But behind that mask, he was methodically collecting data. He bought a secondary phone. He signed up for a secure email account. He installed software, not illegal, but close enough to get him sued in a divorce court if things ever turned ugly. But things were already ugly, just in tuxedos. The second time Grant's name came up, it was a voicemail. Clarissa had left her phone on the kitchen counter while taking a video call upstairs. Mason had watched the little red dot blink as the message recorded. Hey, just checking in. You seemed tense the other night. If you're not ready to tell him, I get it. But I miss you. I really do. The voice was smooth, professional, like someone who practiced vulnerability in front of a mirror. That night, Mason slept in the guest room. Not because he was angry, because he was planning. Now, standing beneath the stars, he walked back to the car and opened the trunk. Under the false bottom, beneath the emergency kit and spare, was a black tactical case the size of a briefcase. Inside, his laptop, hard drives, and 2 encrypted USB sticks. He had everything. Every voicemail. Every text. Screenshots of Clarissa and Grant exchanging hotel reservations under code names, client meeting, design consult, brunch. None of it clever. All of it damning. He had photos, too. One of Clarissa outside a boutique hotel, the same one she claimed was her yoga retreat. Her arm around Grant. Their faces too close to be professional. And then there was the dinner photo. A selfie Grant had posted on his private Instagram, just visible through a burner account Mason used. Clarissa leaning in, laughing, wearing the same gold dress she claimed was new for tonight's family party. She had worn it before, just not for her husband. Mason booted up his laptop, his fingers moving with precision. The screen lit up, casting a pale glow over his face. He opened a folder labeled Insurance. Inside were subfolders, texts, photos, calls, emails, social media, documents. He didn't feel guilty. He felt focused. She had built an entire second life behind his back, and worse, tried to humiliate him on the world stage of her parents' anniversary, as if she hadn't already drained enough from him. His pride, his time, his dreams. He clicked over to his presentation software. The Devlins were expecting a slideshow tonight. Clarissa had asked him to keep it tasteful. She meant sentimental, something clean, historical, fitting of the Devlin name. And Mason had delivered at first. But now the slideshow had a surprise finale. He dragged the final folder, reveal.mp4, into the timeline. Earlier that week, he'd paid a professional video editor to stitch everything together. It started innocently. Black and white photos of Conrad and Miranda's wedding day, set to gentle piano. Then came the home videos. Clarissa as a child, old family gatherings, holiday trips. Perfect, beautiful, polished. But halfway through, the tone shifted. The music stopped. The images changed. Suddenly, the screen would flicker and text would appear, screenshot by screenshot. Clarissa, he's so dense, it's almost cute. Grant, when are you going to stop playing house? Then, photos of the boutique hotel, audio clips layered in. Her laugh, his voice, her voice. Mason doesn't ask questions anymore. He's just there. So drop the deadweight, Grant had said. It would end with the hotel lobby photo, the same gold dress, and then fade to black. A final message. For the Devlins. From the one stranger you forgot could bite. Mason leaned back against the car, watching the city lights. Somewhere down there, the Devlins were drinking, toasting, laughing. Maybe Clarissa was charming a senator or air-kissing someone's fourth wife. She thought she had buried him in silence. But Mason wasn't the type to yell. He was the type to wait. There had been a moment, just one, when he'd considered confronting her outright. A real confrontation. In the kitchen, maybe, or in bed, slamming her phone down, reading the texts out loud, demanding answers, watching her scramble to deny, cry, blame. But it wouldn't have changed anything. Clarissa was born with a silver tongue and golden guilt. She could spin pain into pity with one look. So Mason had chosen something different. He chose poetry. You want to treat me like a ghost? Fine, but I'll haunt every lie you built. You want to turn me into a stranger? Then I'll show you what a stranger with receipts can do. He opened his phone and connected to the slideshow server Clarissa had set up at the venue. He had the access code. She'd given it to him herself, weeks ago, when she still needed him to organize the timeline. Irony's a bitch. He logged in, checked the link, and confirmed the new final file was synced and locked. Password protected. Uneditable. No one could stop it now. A soft wind rustled the trees behind him. The city lights flickered like nervous anticipation. Mason took one long breath, then exhaled. This wasn't revenge. It was recognition. It was everything she buried finally surfacing. He sat on the hood of the Bentley, crossed one leg over the other, and smiled. Chapter 4. The dinner show must go on. The Devlin Country Club hadn't looked this pristine since its grand opening in the 70s, when a former president had attended a fundraiser on the very same marble steps. But tonight, it gleamed like a monument to Southern aristocracy, a ballroom drowning in chandeliers, polished silver, and carefully curated history. Lush ivory roses spilled from tall gold vases on every table. Waiters glided between guests in silent black and white uniforms, balancing trays of crystal flutes and shrimp canapes that looked like edible sculptures. Soft classical music floated through the room, Beethoven, if Mason's memory served him right. But Mason wasn't there. Not in person, anyway. Inside, the ballroom was packed. 200 guests, all of them carefully chosen. There were senators, bank CEOs, real estate tycoons, lawyers with smiles like knives, and wives draped in gowns that cost more than Mason's truck. Generations of legacy wealth filled the air with that polite brand of laughter that only comes from knowing you'll never need to check your bank balance. At the center of it all, as always, stood Conrad Devlin, flawless in a three-piece tuxedo, whiskey neat in one hand, wife on the other arm. Miranda Devlin had gone full matriarch for the occasion. Diamond earrings, a floor-length gown the color of champagne. Her blonde hair perfectly swept back, not a strand out of place. She smiled the way Southern women are trained to, sweet but firm, practiced but warm. She dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief, laughing delicately as a guest complimented the venue. 40 years, she said, her voice just loud enough for others to hear. Can you believe it? 40 years of loving one man, of choosing him every day. Conrad leaned in and kissed her knuckles. Darling, you didn't choose me. I just refused to let you say no. More laughter. A few ahs. Champagne flowed. Toast clinked. Conversations overlapped in a carefully balanced chorus of wealth and pretense. No one noticed the absence of Mason Beck, except maybe one. Clarissa stood near the head table, sipping rose from a crystal glass, the gold satin of her gown catching every bit of candlelight. She looked perfect, painfully so, sculpted, composed, not a hair out of place. She laughed at the right jokes, kissed the cheeks of the right women, and nodded appreciatively when someone admired her necklace. He's so lucky, one of the guests whispered behind a palm. Clarissa, another replied. She could have married anyone. I mean, look at her. That face. That pedigree. She's a Devlin. She caught fragments of the praise and let it coat her ego like warm oil. She basked in it. This was her world, her arena, and she was winning. At least, that's what she told herself. She hadn't seen Mason since that little scene at the entrance. She hadn't bothered to check if he made it home. She assumed he'd do what he always did, get quiet, lick his wounds, and eventually crawl back into place. Men like Mason always thought pride was louder than silence. She was wrong. At precisely 8 p.m., the lights dimmed slightly. A soft hush fell over the crowd as a young assistant with a headset moved to the front of the room and gently tapped the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, if we could please direct our attention to the screen for a special tribute. Guests turned to their seats. Some adjusted their jackets. The waitstaff vanished with military efficiency. Miranda clutched Conrad's hand tightly, smiling through welling tears. "Oh, I can't wait for this," she whispered. Clarissa said she worked so hard putting it together. "I heard Mason helped too," someone nearby said, sipping wine. Clarissa's smile twitched, but held. The assistant nodded toward the AV technician in the corner, who tapped a few buttons on a tablet. The grand screen lowered. The projector hummed to life. A soft piano began to play. The first image faded in, a black and white photo of a younger Conrad and Miranda in front of their first house. Newlyweds. He had a full head of hair, and she wore a high-waisted dress that screamed 1980. The guests sighed in unison. Then came the wedding photo. Conrad in uniform, Miranda beaming beside him. A slow montage began, children, birthdays, Christmas mornings, summer vacations by the lake. Piano swelled. Nostalgia thickened. Clarissa stood with her arms crossed gently, soaking in the admiration radiating toward her family. Guests were mouthing, "How beautiful." "She must have hired a professional editor," someone whispered. "She did," Clarissa lied, smiling graciously. Conrad's eyes sparkled. Miranda's lips trembled. "We were just kids," she whispered to her husband. "Look at us." The screen continued. Footage played. Clarissa as a toddler. A birthday party with a pony. Conrad lifting her into the air. Then high school. Prom. Graduation. The piano faded slightly, giving way to ambient guitar. A video began, Clarissa's wedding. Mason stood at the altar, younger, leaner, eyes full of quiet joy. He reached for her hands as she walked toward him. Guests cheered. Clarissa stiffened. This wasn't part of the final cut. She had asked Mason to remove their wedding footage. It was too personal, she'd said. Too much of us, not enough of them. And yet there it was. Her veil, her vows, the kiss. Whispers rippled through the room, but they were still soft, harmless. Clarissa's chest tightened. She stepped forward toward the technician's table. "Excuse me," she whispered. "Pause it for a moment." He blinked. I don't have access to that file anymore. It was uploaded earlier and locked." Her eyes sharpened. "By who?" He hesitated. "Your husband." Clarissa turned her head toward the screen just as the video of the wedding faded to black. And the music stopped. Silence. Dead silence. Then the screen flickered. Static. A beat of visual noise. Guests shifted in their chairs, unsure if it was a technical error or part of the show. Conrad frowned. Miranda looked confused. Clarissa took one step forward. The static cleared, and on the screen was a screenshot, a text message. Clarissa's name at the top. "He still thinks I'm dragging him to wine tastings because I enjoy his company. Cute, right?" Then another. "No, I told Mason it's a yoga retreat. He bought it." Of course he did. Guests froze. "What the hell is this?" someone whispered. More texts. "We'll be back by Sunday. You'll still be on my skin when I'm standing next to him at dinner. Don't worry. He never checks my phone." Clarissa's heart dropped. "No," she breathed. No. Stop this. Turn it off." The technician was already trying, his fingers scrambling across the touchscreen. "It's password protected," he stammered. I can't override it." The screen flickered again. This time, a photo appeared. Clarissa, in that same gold dress, outside the Parkland Hotel, leaning against a man in a tailored gray suit, his hand on her lower back, her mouth close to his ear. "Grant," clear as day. Gasps erupted. Conrad stood from his seat. "What the hell is this?" Miranda's hand went to her mouth. Clarissa bolted forward, gripping the side of the screen setup. Her voice trembled, but not with fear. With fury. This wasn't supposed to happen. That son of a bitch. But it was already happening. The screen flickered again, then went black, and across the bottom, in simple white typeface. For the Devlins. With love, the stranger. Chapter 5. The Stranger's Slideshow. The ballroom stood in a stunned hush. Every wine glass was half lifted, every laugh cut short mid-breath. The screen had gone black, but no one looked away. For the first time in her life, Clarissa Devlin had lost control of the room. Her heels echoed against the hardwood as she rushed toward the projector setup, the satin of her dress swishing like a war banner behind her. Face flushed, jaw tight, she hissed through her teeth. "Cut the feed. Right now," she barked at the technician. "I'm trying," the man stammered, sweating bullets, his finger jabbing the tablet controls. "But the file's encrypted, locked under something called Stranger Protocol. Override it." "I can't." Whoever designed this knew what they were doing. The guests began murmuring louder, seats shifting, necks craning. Miranda clutched her clutch against her chest like a shield. "What was that text?" she whispered to Conrad, blinking rapidly. "Did I read that correctly?" Conrad didn't answer. He hadn't moved. The screen flickered again, then returned, not to nostalgia, but to surveillance. A new slide emerged. No more soft piano. No more black and white memories. Just silence and stillness. Clarissa's text messages rolled across the screen like a courtroom exhibit. "Clarissa, he thinks I'm working late. I'm actually wine drunk and on Grant's couch in nothing but a t-shirt. Clarissa, Mason's too busy being noble to realize he's a prop. A working-class trophy husband. LOL. Clarissa, he's great at fixing the garage. Too bad he can't fix being boring." Gasps flared like gunshots. Clarissa's face turned corpse white. "Oh my God," someone whispered. "Did she really say that?" A woman near the bar placed a hand over her heart. An older guest dropped his glass. The server didn't even flinch. Clarissa lunged toward the screen, shouting, "This is fake. These are AI or edited." Then came the audio file. A voice, her voice, crackling from the speakers, crystal clear. "Honestly, if he died in a car crash, I'd probably post a black and white photo, cry for 2 weeks, and move on. Everyone would feel sorry for me. I could finally breathe." Dead silence. Clarissa staggered back a step, like the words physically hit her. Someone in the crowd muttered, "Jesus Christ." Conrad slowly lowered himself back into his chair, as if gravity had quadrupled. Miranda stared at her daughter in horror. "Clarissa, what is this?" Clarissa whirled toward her, hair coming loose. "It's not real. He edited this, mother. It's deep fakes or something. More slides. More screenshots. A hotel reservation under her name and Grant's initials. Dates that lined up with her spa weekends. Venmo receipts. Instagram photos that had been deleted, now blown up on a 10-foot screen. One photo. Clarissa in a plush robe on a hotel balcony, holding a mimosa. Another. Grant's hand on her thigh at a lounge. Their faces turned away from the camera, but unmistakable. The voice recordings didn't stop. Mason's idea of romance is home-cooked pasta. I fake moans just so he'll shut up about bonding. Grant has a yacht. Mason has a lawnmower. You do the math. Clarissa was shaking now, her glassy eyes darting toward the exit, but the room had swallowed her whole. There was nowhere to run. The guests had gone deathly quiet. No one knew what was more shocking. The affair, the cruelty, or the sheer disdain she'd buried behind pearls and posture. Then came the photos Mason had taken himself. An old shot from their first anniversary, him holding a ring box, kneeling in front of Clarissa, eyes full of love. She wore a dress, laughing. The caption in bold, white letters. Before I knew. A follow-up shot. That same dress, years later, crumpled on a hotel room floor. Time-stamped. Geotagged. Parkland Hotel. Clarissa let out a guttural shriek, lunging forward again. "Turn it off." She slapped the tablet out of the technician's hand. It clattered to the floor, screen cracking. But the projection didn't stop. It was running independently. Mason had designed it that way. And then, the phone started ringing. Not one, not two, but dozens. Ringtones and vibration alerts buzzed through the ballroom like angry wasps. Miranda's purse buzzed first, then Clarissa's clutch, then guests pulling out phones, reading texts, gasping. Is this real? Just saw it on Reddit. It's on Twitter. Someone's live streaming it. Oh my God, newsfeed just tagged it. Devlin downfall, a woman gasped, covering her mouth with both hands. People are screen recording. Clarissa grabbed her mother's arm, desperate. Make it stop, please, Mom, make it stop. But Miranda yanked her arm away, eyes trembling with betrayal. I invited you into this family, Mason, she whispered to the air, and you turned this into a tabloid ambush. Conrad said nothing. He looked like a statue carved from disbelief and acid. On screen, the final sequence began to play. A slow fade-in. Clarissa and Mason on a beach. The wind in their hair. A video clip. She's smiling, then turns from the camera as he kisses her forehead. Then, Clarissa with Grant, caught walking into the hotel, smiling like she hadn't smiled in years. Or maybe just never for Mason. Then a collage of Mason, working in the garage, laughing with Clarissa's nephews, cooking in the kitchen with flour on his nose. A quiet instrumental track hummed underneath. Finally, the screen went black again. The text appeared. For the Devlins, with love, the stranger. Chapter 6. The Fallout. Mason Beck didn't hear the screaming, didn't hear the gasps, the crashing of champagne flutes, or the frantic buzz of phones vibrating like a chorus of angry hornets. He was already 20 miles away, windows down, tie loosened, one arm resting out the driver's side door as his truck sliced through the cool night air. The wind didn't just whip through his hair, it peeled something off him. Pretenses, guilt, years of swallowing his pride like gravel. Gone. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't broken either. The silence, the steady hum of tires against asphalt, it was peace. Not vengeance, not even satisfaction, just release. The headlights lit up the Tulane highway ahead, and he breathed in deep, clean air through his nose. He'd always loved this drive, the back roads away from town, where trees leaned in like guardians and the sky opened wide above. His playlist shuffled softly through the speakers. Something old school. Leon Bridges, maybe. Mason didn't notice. He just watched the moonlight dance off the edge of the windshield and let the past crumble behind him. Back at the Devlin estate, however, the ballroom was on fire. Not literally, but emotionally it was scorched earth. What the hell just happened? Conrad Devlin's voice thundered through the room like a falling chandelier. The guests were scattering in all directions, heels clacking, murmurs like swarms, phones glowing like fireflies as people took photos, sent messages, or pulled up live stream clips already circulating online. I told you she was trouble, someone whispered. Did Mason really do this? Oh my God, this is like a Netflix documentary happening live. Conrad grabbed a silver tray off a passing waiter's hands and hurled it at the bar. Bottles shattered. Liquor sprayed. I want everyone out. Now. But no one listened to him. The room had turned into a self-feeding storm. Every conversation, every sideways glance was fuel. A group of older men in suits whispered near the grand piano, exchanging scandalized murmurs about reputational damage, trust funds, prenup leaks. One woman typed furiously, muttering, "This is going to tank the Devlin wine partnership. No one wants to toast betrayal." Miranda stood frozen in the middle of it all, mascara streaking down her cheeks. She hadn't moved since the last slide. She clutched a linen napkin in her hand, like it could somehow make this elegant again. Her voice came out a trembling whisper. Why would he do this to us? Clarissa turned, breath ragged, eyes wide and watery, but no longer crying. To us, she snapped, stepping forward, gold dress wrinkled and her heels uneven on the glossy floor. No, he did it to me, because I married the wrong man and tried to fake it too long. You brought this shame into our home. Miranda cried. This family. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. I embarrassed you? Clarissa barked out a hollow laugh. You mean Mason embarrassed you? The man you never thought was good enough. The one you spent 10 years trying to mold into one of you people. Conrad stepped between them like a referee. Enough. This is a private matter. Let's take it to the lounge and shut the damn doors. But they didn't move. People were still filming. Clarissa shoved a hand through her tangled hair. Her voice cracked. He was nothing when I met him, she spat. Fixing his car in a Home Depot parking lot. I gave him everything. I made him someone people noticed. Miranda's lip trembled. You destroyed him. No, Clarissa said coldly. I just underestimated him. Out in the courtyard, guests were pouring into the valet line like rats off a sinking yacht. A young woman in a velvet gown showed her phone to a friend. Look, it's on TikTok already. 40,000 views. One of the Devlin's business partners paced by the hedge wall. Phone pressed to his ear, muttering, We need to issue a statement now. Spin it as a data breach or a hoax. I don't care. Just get it out before the morning. Inside the ballroom, waitstaff tried to discreetly clean up shattered glass while stepping over abandoned purses and toppled chairs. The slideshow had long ended, but its ghost still haunted every corner. The Devlins, once the very image of old money power, now looked like soap opera villains outed mid-scene. Conrad took a deep breath, trying to collect himself. His voice dropped low, dangerously composed. We'll recover. We'll say it was a fabrication, that he doctored the footage. Miranda stared at him, aghast. You saw the hotel timestamp. You saw the texts. You think people are that stupid? We have lawyers, PR people. There's always spin. Clarissa laughed again, but there was no humor this time, just bitter surrender. You can't spin a woman saying she wishes her husband died in a car crash, Dad. He flinched, ever so slightly. I didn't mean it, she whispered, but no one listened. Her phone buzzed again. She hesitated before pulling it out of her clutch. The screen was cracked. One message lit up beneath the shadow lines. It wasn't from a friend. Wasn't from her lawyer. It was from a number she hadn't saved, but knew by heart. Mason, enjoy the party. I'm finally done pretending. Clarissa stared at it. That was it. No threats. No rage. No follow-up. Just the final note of a man who had finally dropped the mask she'd helped sew onto his face for years. She read it again and again. Her thumb hovered over the reply button, but she couldn't type. Her mind was white noise. Miranda sat down slowly in a nearby chair, head in her hands. Conrad took a long, trembling breath and looked around the once grand ballroom, now reduced to a crime scene of shattered illusions. And far away, down a quiet country road, Mason Beck kept driving, one hand out the window, catching wind. Chapter 7. The Final Gift. A week passed. Not that the Devlins tracked it in days anymore. Time inside the estate seemed to stretch and buckle. Less a calendar, more a sentence being served. Reporters still circled like vultures. The scandal hadn't blown over, it had spread. Magazine headlines, podcast episodes, Twitter threads, all orbiting one name, the stranger. Conrad tried to carry on as usual boardroom calls, damage control meetings, legal posturing. But his voice lacked edge. His shirt stayed wrinkled longer. The mirror no longer returned his usual predator's smirk. Miranda barely left her reading room. She hadn't touched her wine cellar in 5 days. That fact alone alarmed the staff. Clarissa disappeared. Some said she was in New York. Others heard whispers of Switzerland, some detox spa for the rich and exposed. No one really cared. Not anymore. The world had changed. Mason Beck hadn't just exposed the family, he'd redefined them. But they hadn't heard the last of him. On the 7th morning, it arrived. A square, vintage wooden box. Polished mahogany with brass hinges, hand-delivered to the estate's front gate. No postage stamp. No courier uniform. Just initials burned lightly into the lid. M.B. The housekeeper found it first. She brought it in with trembling hands, setting it gently on the marble foyer table like it might explode. Miranda stood at the stairwell, robe drawn tightly around her, brows narrowed. Who left that? The housekeeper stammered. It was just there, at the gate. No car, just sitting on the stone pillar. Conrad descended the stairs, dressed in slacks and a half-buttoned shirt. He stared at the box like it was a loaded weapon. I assume we checked for devices. Miranda rolled her eyes. It's a box, not a bomb. But the tension in the room could have set one off. Conrad finally stepped forward, flipped the latches, and slowly lifted the lid. Inside, resting in black velvet, was a single object, a USB drive, wooden, engraved with one word: legacy. The study lights were dimmed. The family, what remained of it, gathered around the old desktop computer Miranda never used. A relic in a room full of relics. Conrad inserted the USB without a word. The screen flickered. A black window appeared. No menu. No options. Just an automatic launch. A soft piano melody began to play. Not dramatic. Not dark. Just elegant. And then it began. A video. A film. The opening frame. A garden path. Lush, bright, full of laughing guests and clinking glasses. The Devlin wedding. 11 years ago. Pristine footage, digitally restored, better than what even the family photographer had managed. Clarissa stepped through the arbor, young, radiant, not yet polished into cruelty. Her hand found Mason's. He was awkward, charming, in a suit a size too big. His eyes never left her face. A narrator spoke softly over the music. A man's voice, calm, precise, with just enough grit to feel human. There are stories built to last, and others built to be forgotten. This is neither. This is a moment, preserved, not for vanity, not for victory, but because once it mattered. Miranda's hand froze around her teacup. The footage continued, candid shots of the guests, the vows, the dancing. Mason twirling Clarissa on the floor, laughing like he hadn't been taught yet how to hurt. Then, they said it wouldn't last. They were right. But that doesn't mean it wasn't beautiful for a moment. The screen shifted. Behind-the-scenes footage. Unreleased. Mason filming Clarissa from a distance as she did her makeup in the hotel suite, unaware. Her humming. Her tossing grapes in the air and catching them. A moment with Conrad, awkwardly fixing Mason's bow tie. Miranda adjusting Clarissa's earrings. Even the Devlins looked more human here. Not like aristocrats. Like people. Miranda's breath hitched. "Where did he get this?" she whispered. Conrad didn't answer. His jaw was locked tight. The narration returned. We only ever really see people through the lens we choose. Sometimes we call that love. Sometimes delusion. Sometimes both. The screen shifted again. The kiss at the altar. Cheers. A release of white doves. Then the camera panned upward to the estate itself. Soaring proud cold. But no dirt followed. No affair expose. No more revenge. It wasn't about that anymore. It was about preservation. A final tribute to what was good before it went bad. A memory, not a weapon. They'll talk about the ending, the voice continued. They always do, but I remember the beginning. I remember the hope, the hunger, the small kindnesses people showed when no one was watching. The shot returned to Clarissa in her wedding dress, standing under twinkling lights. Mason walked up behind her and kissed her shoulder. She smiled, a real smile, not for cameras, not for family, for him. Conrad exhaled sharply. Miranda lowered her eyes. The screen slowly faded to black. No credits, no music, just one quote in white serif letters across the screen. Some stories are worth preserving. Some names aren't. And then a signature, faint, handwritten style text at the bottom. The Stranger. Chapter 8. Mason's Rebirth. The smell of fresh paint still clung to the walls. It wasn't a mansion, not even close. But for the first time in years, Mason Beck stood in a space that was entirely his. No curated photos on the wall. No embroidered Devlin family crest above the fireplace. No staff pretending to respect him. Just a small third-floor apartment downtown, exposed brick, tall windows, and a skyline view that didn't care who your daddy was. He let out a breath, long, slow, and let it fill the empty space. No echoes, just quiet. Finally, peace. A leather duffel rested by the door. One suitcase leaned against the kitchen island. That was it. Everything he owned now fit into 2 bags. He liked it that way. He grabbed a coffee mug, matte black, still wrapped in bubble plastic, and stepped onto the balcony. The August sun stretched lazily across the city. Cars buzzed below like ants. Somewhere across the rooftops, someone was strumming a guitar, out of tune and careless. Mason sipped, let it burn the roof of his mouth. No chaos. No cameras. No family obligations. Just now, his phone buzzed. Not with gossip. Not with pity. Not with PR damage control. Just a name flashing across the screen. Toby. He hadn't heard from him since his wedding day. Mason answered, already smiling. Well, damn. You still alive? A booming laugh. I was about to ask you the same thing, man. You drop off the grid or join a biker gang? Mason chuckled. Kind of both. Good. About time. You still know how to play poker, or has all that old money etiquette softened you up? Mason leaned on the railing. Bring cash and prepare to lose. Toby paused. Hey, listen, I've got something else too. A guy I'm working with needs a partner. Commercial real estate redevelopment. Good bones, bad execution. You be perfect. You interested? Mason didn't answer right away. He stared out at the skyline. At the cranes, shifting steel, the skeletons of new towers rising above the ruins of old ones. Rebuild from the bones up. I'm listening, he said. By noon, he was driving again. Not in the luxury SUV Clarissa picked out for him years ago. Not the polished and practical family-friendly model designed to impress her parents. No, this one had soul. A 1972 Honda CB 750. Matte silver. Black leather seat. Growled like a tiger when he kicked the ignition. He'd wanted one since college. Clarissa called them death traps for people with poor impulse control. The kind of backhanded Joker family had taught her to master. Now, he revved it like a war cry down the boulevard. He pulled up to the coast just before sunset. Helmet off, hair messy, boots coated in road dust. He parked the bike facing west and watched the sun melt into the ocean like it had nowhere better to be. Behind him, families laughed on the boardwalk. Somewhere, a girl squealed at a seagull stealing her fries. A street performer juggled flaming sticks while a dog howled along to his harmonica. Mason smiled. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't broken. He was awake. Back at the apartment, he cracked open a beer, sat on the floor, and opened his laptop. His inbox was a war zone, real estate inquiries, media offers, a few invitations to podcasts wanting the inside scoop on the slideshow incident. He deleted most of them without reading, except one, a name he hadn't seen in days. Clarissa. The subject line. Was that really necessary? That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just a wounded princess poking at the wreckage, wondering how the peasant found matches. He stared at the screen. The cursor blinked, and blinked, and blinked. A younger version of him might have answered. Try to sound noble, or savage, or clever. Something to show her he still mattered. But not this version. This version leaned back in his chair, let the silence stretch long and wide, and smirked. He clicked, delete, then closed the laptop. No reply. No message, just one thought whispered in his chest like a victory drum. Not replying isn't silence. It's a mic drop. Chapter 9. Epilogue. Stranger no more. The apartment was quiet. Early evening light filtered through the tall windows, casting a warm amber glow over exposed brick and minimalist furniture. Mason Beck stood in front of the full-length mirror that leaned casually against the wall in the bedroom. It wasn't a grand mirror, just a simple frame of dark wood, but tonight it held all the weight of a throne. He looked at himself, not with the desire to fix or adjust, but with something quieter, something deeper, a measured admiration. The sharp lines of his jaw, the slight stubble dusting his chin like a warrior's shadow, the eyes clear, steady, and piercing, reflecting back not the man he was, but the man he had become. Mason's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. They thought they made me a ghost, he thought, his gaze unwavering. His mind began narrating the story that had become his life, a story few outside those walls understood. They tried to erase me, to cut me out like a stain on their perfect tapestry. They whispered, stranger, uninvited, unworthy. They built their walls higher, their circles tighter. But ghosts are unseen, unheard. I was none of those things. I was a storm waiting to break. The reflection held no bitterness now, only power, the kind that comes from walking through fire and choosing to burn brighter instead of fading away. He turned away from the mirror, ran his hands through his hair, shorter now, less fuss, more practical. He pulled on a dark jacket over a crisp white shirt, unbuttoned at the collar just enough to say, "I'm comfortable in my skin." He stepped out onto the balcony. The city lights had started to blink awake, one by one, beneath a sky freckled with stars. He could hear faint laughter from below, music, glasses clinking, a gathering of people. Not some stiff, choreographed dinner where he was a pawn, a trophy, or a mistake, but his people, those who valued him for his grit, his mind, his heart. His phone buzzed briefly on the kitchen counter. He didn't check it. Not yet. Because tonight, Mason Beck was not chasing ghosts or messages from the past. He was creating moments. The evening air was cool, but carried a hint of jasmine and something electric possibility. Mason stepped into the small but vibrant gathering on a rooftop garden, the hum of city life all around. Friends welcomed him with genuine smiles, arms thrown around shoulders. No titles, no judgments, only respect. "Hey, Beck," Toby called out, lifting a glass of bourbon. "Looking good. The legend's still alive." Mason grinned, clinking his glass gently against Toby's. "You know it. Took a while, but I'm finally getting the hang of it." Laughter. Stories swapped. The air buzzed with easy conversation, business plans, motorcycle rides, old songs, new dreams. One woman caught Mason's eye, confident, sharp, with laughter in her eyes. "Come join us," she said, beckoning with a nod. He moved across the terrace, feeling a warmth he hadn't known in years. Not the kind that comes from wealth or status, but from connection. Later, Mason found himself standing near the edge, looking out over the shimmering cityscape. The wind tousled his hair again, like a familiar friend. He felt a deep peace settle in his chest, no longer burdened by the past, no longer defined by someone else's expectations. The stranger was gone, or more accurately, he had arrived, and he did so on his own terms. A voice whispered in his mind, the same one that had narrated his journey, steady and sure. The stranger was never lost. He was just choosing when to arrive. Mason smiled softly, closed his eyes for a moment, and let the night fold around him. For the first time, he wasn't a ghost. He was a man, and his story had only just begun.